So welcome. Welcome to our presentation today, Finding Your Center in Challenging Times Together. If you aren't familiar with us, River's Edge Counseling Center is located in St. Albert, although I want to say today it's located anywhere as our therapists continue to see clients from all over the province as we are fully doing video and telephone counseling sessions at this time. We have a team of 23 therapists, psychologists, and counselors who have a variety of specialties. And although I'd say one of our specialties, which might not be so obvious, is one that our admin holds in finding the right fit and helping clients match to someone on our team who's a good fit for them to help them reach whatever goals that they have. This is a really challenging time for everyone, and we recognize that. And as a team, we wanted to think of a way that we could respond to our community in a way that would be helpful and meaningful. Some of you might be aware of our Wellness Matters talks that happen a couple of times a month, and usually we can invite people into our center and offer some treats and some time together to learn. But we decided we would take our Wellness Matters talks to cyberspace and offer webinars. And we have about 16 of them lined up between now and the end of June. And also on social media, we'll be posting some shorter interactions with our therapists. And as we see clients and also pay attention to what's happening in our own life and to the news and the people around us, just to the kind of challenges and questions that people have that are unique to this time. These webinars are meant to just bring the knowledge and the experience, some of the tips and tools that our therapists have, and hopefully to be helpful to you. So I'm really happy to introduce one of our teammates today, Kjariene Seymour. Kjariene is a registered psychologist and has been since 2012. Something really interesting about Kjariene is this is not her first career. She comes to this career by way of being a physiotherapist first, which gives her a really unique perspective of an appreciation, I think, for the mind-body connection as well. She has experience working in a number of different contexts, and she works with adults and couples and children's and teens and families. So pretty much anyone Kjariene spends time with and brings her knowledge and skills to. She has a deep, deep passion for helping people, and that's shown through both of the careers she's chosen, and certainly this one as a therapist. When she is not connecting with clients in her practice at River's Edge, she loves to spend time with her family. She has 2 small boys, so she comes at the topic today of how to balance and center ourselves, not just as a therapist, but as a mom, and balancing all of those things herself. She tells me when she is not practicing therapy and with her small boys, she likes to practice yoga and read. I hope she has some time for that in the midst of all that. So with that, I'm going to leave it to you, Kjariene, and let you start your presentation.
Sounds good. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for being part of this webinar on how to center ourselves during this surreal time. I'm grateful to have this chance to connect with you and give you some tips and exercises that hopefully you find helpful. So I'm going to share my presentation with you. Just give me a moment to connect to that. So the title of this webinar is Finding Your Center in Challenging Times Together. And the first thing that probably strikes me about what our current situation is like for most of us is what is happening. There's some shock. There's some people who are overwhelmed. A lot of us are exhausted and frustrated and anxious, really, really anxious. Many of us feel like our world was shaken like a snow globe and rolled upside down. And how exactly are we supposed to feel centered in all of this? We're all feeling something in this time, and whatever it is for you, it probably feels a little bit like I'm feeling, which is a little out of sync. The old familiar has kind of fallen away as we try to find a new normal, whatever normal is. layered on top of whatever we were going through before COVID-19 and everything else that's going on. We're all faced with this new unfamiliar set of challenges and questions. And some of the questions that we might be asking ourselves is, am I going to be okay? What about the people I care about? How am I going to manage working from home? And now that kids are not in school or in childcare, how am I going to manage those pieces as well? I miss people that I used to see all the time. My parents, other family members, my friends. When am I going to see them again? And how am I going to cope? And how does anyone? And can I get off this roller coaster right now? And it's normal to feel anxiety in these times. And our questions are natural and our anxiety is natural. We are facing something that we are now aware of, but many things are unknown. And it's impacting our world in a devastating way. It's completely normal to feel fear and wonder whether things are going to be okay. Most of us have faced many challenges before, but this feels quite different, and that's because it is. And we might wonder, how are we supposed to cope? How are we supposed to help others cope when we're not really sure ourselves? And in all of this, we need to shift towards two important things: finding our center within ourselves and reminding ourselves that we are all in this together. And when I'm talking about finding our center, we need to get back to that sense of who we are and be grounded and affirmed in that. And I know that that's a tall order, but it is from a place of balance and alignment with who we are, our essence, our capacities, our openness, our strength, our endurance, knowing that we've been through many things before. And most importantly, probably, our tremendous capacity to love and be loved. All of these things carry us through our lives, and particularly in times of challenge and struggle. Yet in the face of this overwhelming feeling of struggle right now, it can be challenging to get this sense of center back. We will find a way forward together. And I really do believe this. This is the other important element of getting through life, and especially during serious challenges such as now, is remembering that we truly are in this together, and that is the way to move forward out of it. And it's not just something we say, but it's shown through our thoughts and our actions. We need to remind ourselves of our inherent interconnection with each other and with every living thing in this universe. We share our lives with the people we love, but more than that, we share our lives with our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors, our communities, and our world. There is power in centering ourselves, but this power is magnified beyond what we can imagine when we combine forces for good as a number of people working together for each other in our families, in our communities, and in the world. And our good thoughts and actions impact others in profound ways. We're seeing this in this time of crisis, maybe if we've not seen it before, that what we do, how we act, how we see the world has a profound impact on what happens next for all of us. I see these powerful forces of both centering myself and the pull of togetherness and interconnection in my own life, particularly when I look at things like the stars. And I love looking at the sky and seeing the stars. It's something I find tremendously grounding, and maybe you do too. And it helps me to connect my center, because through everything, the stars are like a beautiful moving compass to so many moments in a lot of our lives. And when I see the stars, I remember how amazing it is that I'm alive and that the people I love are alive. And that just as I take breaths without thinking about it, or that my heart beats without me having to think about it, and my body's able to do so many things, and I'm able to have thoughts and dreams, and so are you. And these things are true for us all. And in some ways, there's comfort for me when something like this happens, to be able to see that the stars are still shining, and how many generations have lived under the same stars, many of the same stars, and lived through such great challenges. And to me, that just connects me to something bigger and deeper. And while I'm one being, and you are many beings listening to this webinar, I just feel so much part of something so much bigger when I consider looking at the stars, and that we're part of the fabric of the universe. And it's an amazing, beautiful, living universe. And so that sense of togetherness, I think, is just really important. And so how do we center? Well, it's difficult. I think that there are steps that we can talk about tonight that I think might be helpful for you. But this is kind of a jumping off point. There might be a lot of different steps that you take that help you center. These are just a few of my suggestions, and I hope that they're helpful to you. Let's start with a few. I would say the first thing is that we need to give ourselves permission to feel the feelings we have before we can get centered, or even feel our sense of togetherness and live from that place. We need to honor our feelings. We often try and push our feelings down or push them away. We don't necessarily like feeling, especially some of the things that we think are negative feelings. But we have feelings anyway. And feelings just sometimes seem to get in the way, but they're necessary for us. And when we push them away for too long, they usually leak out in other ways that we don't intend. They leak out in terms of our feelings about ourselves. They leak out in terms of our feelings about other people and our relationships. They impact the decisions we make about our lives. And so now, whatever feelings we were struggling with, or relationship or family stuff we were dealing with before, probably seems magnified and intensified, especially if we're self-isolating, social distancing, and in close quarters, as it is suggested that we are. And it can feel very closed in and difficult. But if you can allow yourself to feel your feelings, that's a starting point. And the next thing that I'm going to talk about is creating a routine and sticking to it. Chris Hadfield, the Canadian astronaut, I really like his books, but I also like a lot of the interviews that he's had. And he had one recently about COVID-19. And he was making parallels to the current crisis we are facing. When he was in space, he actually spent 160 days in isolation, working on his own, and with a lot of threats in space. And so he feels very much like this time is reminiscent of that for him. And something that he leaned into greatly was having a sense of routine. And he said, even though it was boring and every day was quite similar, he knew he was purposeful, and that he was doing things that made a difference. And he knew what his routine was. He got up at the same time each day. He had his morning routine. He did some more work. He had lunch, he had work. It was just a repetitive thing, but it kept him going on each day. And in many ways, for our mental health, we are built on needing structure and routine. And so something that would be important at this point is to continue having a routine. And we can create new routines. That's probably what we need to do in these times. I know that my family has had a new routine. I'm working from home, so is my husband, and we have 2 small children, as Nicole was mentioning. And so it's how to fit all the pieces together. But if we know what to expect, we can ease into the tasks at hand, even if they're challenging. And then if there's a set routine, but things shift a little bit, it doesn't feel as jarring when that happens. And things do pop up. It's better though, even better if we're grounded and centered in that routine. And that's what we crave. It can be helpful to have family conversations at this time about what that routine should look like, and including children in those conversations and teens, having an idea of what needs to be done, what can be let go of at this time, how the family team will work together. This not only creates safety and comfort, but it also allows everyone to find their center and for the family to find their center, whoever the family is, whether that's your partner or your spouse, or whether you have children or not, whoever's in the home, so that everybody has a sense of what the house is going to function like. Because it is a little different now when kids are not at school or not in daycare or childcare. And we're not usually relying on others to take care of our children at this time. But even just working from home, it's very different when you have two spouses working from home. Usually you get breaks from each other. You know, we love our spouses, but we get breaks from each other during the day. And now that's not happening. It's a very different time. It's also important that we eat healthy, that we try and keep a regular sleep schedule, that we move our bodies in exercise. And these are all simple things that, and important things that we can do. In terms of if you found that coming into this, that some of there were some difficulties in terms of your relationships or in family relationships, you may want to consider consulting with a therapist about what might be a good fit for your family, if that's something that speaks to you, because this can be a really stressful time. The next thing is to be gentle with yourself and with others. I would say that I've talked to a lot of clients in the last couple of weeks that have been very hard on themselves. And that's a common theme with a lot of clients that I see, being very hard on themselves. And sometimes that's part of a lifelong pattern, but also being quite hard on others. I've had people where they feel that others have been overreacting or underreacting to this current crisis. And what I would say to that is that in whatever way you've handled this crisis or how you feel someone else has handled this crisis, be gentle with yourself and be gentle with them. All of us are just trying to do the best we can. And I think that sometimes we're probably seeing some strange reactions or just different things that we didn't expect from people. But sometimes that's just where they are. That's where they're trying to create their own safety, and that's what makes them feel safe. So in some ways, we might need to be a little less hard on ourselves, maybe a lot less hard on ourselves, and easier with other people. And because when we give into the negative self-talk or the negative feelings and thoughts and the judgment of self and others, it takes us further away from our center, and it takes us further away from that sense of togetherness. And sometimes it's been easier for people that I've worked with and people that I talk to, that it's to be nicer or more understanding of others. But maybe if we can be just a little more compassionate towards ourselves, that also comes through in our interactions with others. And so I'm going to tell you a story that I had recently, and maybe you can relate. I was at the grocery store and there were only 4 boxes of eggs left in the grocery case. And I opened the cooler door and took 2 boxes. And a gentleman came up to me and was pretty gruff and said, "You're not going to take all of those eggs, are you? Like, I need eggs too." And I had 2 boxes of eggs in my hand at the time, and that's all I was going to purchase. And there were still 2 boxes at the cooler, but I could see the frustration in his face. And I smiled at him and replied, I was looking for 2 boxes, but you're welcome to the other 2 boxes. And his face softened and he looked slightly embarrassed. He said, well, I just needed one, and took a box and smiled and walked away. And it struck me that if I had reacted differently, if I had not been particularly centered in that moment, and let's be real, of course, we're not centered all the time in our interactions or in our worlds. But if I had not been centered in that moment and able to see his struggle in this great time of struggle, and I know what that feels like for me, that he wasn't being mean, but he was just having a bad moment, as all of us are bound to have. We're all riding this snow globe, all shaken up, all of us feeling on edge at times. And if I hadn't been in that moment and been able to get back to center, then we might have had a very different interaction than we did. And so I know that I'm not always calm or centered. No one is. But I do take time to calm my mind and get centered as often as I can. And through that, my world becomes lighter and I see myself and others differently. And I see my actions and others' actions too, in a different light. It's not that there are not times, of course, when I, like everyone else, are feeling anger or sadness or anxiety or hurt. All of us experience these feelings. And I guess I would say if you catch yourself in a not great moment, and we're bound to have not great moments in our regular lives, I think we're probably up against more sort of not great moments in our current lives. Try to remember that you can stop that moment and move on to a better moment. It's like the ripple effect in a lake. Let's put out as many good ripples as we can. The other thing that I've noticed about this current time that we're in that I think would be helpful towards getting back to center is to be informed but limit what comes in. There's just so much information right now. It's information overload. And I'm feeling sensitive to all the information coming in. And I'm feeling like I need to protect myself from the information. I want to be informed, but I find that a lot of the information goes beyond an understanding of the facts and what I need to know. There's a lot of conjecture and a lot of tough realities to bring us down and increase our anxiety further. And that only serves to take us further away from our center and further into fear. And when we lean into that fear, we're often too anxious to remember how together we are and that others are suffering too. Maybe we can be informed, but maybe we limit what comes in. Maybe that means checking the news once or twice a day. Maybe that means only looking at one trusted news source. Maybe that means limiting social media or news settings on devices. Maybe that means watching programs that don't trigger us. Maybe it means creating COVID-free, fear-free zones for communication so that we're not continuing to contribute to our own anxiety, but others as well. The other thing that I think is really important is to create time and space for ourselves and others. I really liked this picture because I can't imagine living in that kind of apartment building where all the apartments were so close together. It makes me a little claustrophobic even just looking at that picture. But it can feel that way in this time. We're not used to living in our homes and spending primarily most of our time in our homes, layered on top of each other as people. We're usually meant to kind of have space and time, and we usually have those opportunities a little more than we are in this current time of social distancing and self-isolation. So as much as I love my family, and I do, it's tough being cooped up at home. I know it's what we need to do as part of, being responsible and being socially aware, but it feels a little too much at times. And we do need time to ourselves to experience moments of calm so that we can get back to that center of ourselves, so that we can find those moments of peace and be able to make some really good conscious choices from that space. This is a picture that I really liked because it just looks very, very alone and peaceful to me. And maybe we can't get this alone, but we need to carve out little bits of time for ourselves somehow, some way, somewhere. Whatever you can do to just be as opposed to do, because I think that's the other thing that is potentially a downside of the current time we are in, is that's just go, go, go all the time. Because we're doing things in different ways. We're working from home. The expectations might have changed. There might be a lot of our work, it might be involved with COVID and a lot of different things that are, just challenges, and so many of them from different directions. And we need to create this space and time for our partners and our spouses and our children. because we all need a break from each other sometimes. Let's face it, we can drive each other crazy at times, even though we love them. And so taking time for ourselves, maybe some of the exercises at the end of the presentation will be helpful for you. Maybe going to another space in the house briefly, maybe having a shower or a bath, taking a walk in nature, meditating or praying, if that speaks to you, creating a playlist and dancing, listening to a podcast, exercising in some way. Whatever it is that works for you to give you a sense of having some space and time. And we can give cues to our family and in turn take our cues from them. The other day, I was feeling anxious about getting this webinar completed. And my husband asked me a question related to his work, which was important. And then the oven timer went off and my 22-month-old was crying. It was a perfect moment of chaos. And then my 4-year-old asked for some juice and I accidentally dropped the container and the juice went everywhere. Yikes. And I was feeling frustrated and overwhelmed and my face must have shown it. My 4-year-old came over and he took my hand and said, "Mommy, I know you're frustrated right now. It's okay to be frustrated, but we need to take a breath." And so I took a breath and he breathed with me. And it struck me that we've done that together before when he's been upset, and how beautiful it was that he was bringing it back to me. And it had obviously stuck with him. But of course, our children are always watching and feeling what we're putting out, as everyone is. Our spouses and partners feel what we're putting out as well. And so we can center ourselves and each other if we only let it in. And we can feel what it does for those around us. Making time to connect. We are social beings. It feels really strange and uncomfortable to be told to keep social distance and self-isolate. We are interconnected after all, and it doesn't feel quite right to not be able to connect and congregate together. And especially in times of stress, when that is something that we will often do, is to seek others. We're not used to keeping people at bay, and yet we know it's what we need to do right now in this period of time. And so since we are in this time where we are self-isolating and staying at home and social distancing, we're not necessarily seeing a lot of important others in our lives. Our parents, our grandparents, other members of our family, our coworkers, our coaches, our parents, and many others. And we don't have places to take our kids. The usual haunts of going to the library or going to the pool, those are not available right now. And we're not having parties or play dates or get-togethers in the same way at all. So we have to lean on other ways to connect now. And, I would say that, FaceTiming and Skyping and Zooming weren't things that I've done very much, but it's a great way to keep in touch. And it goes far beyond just hearing voices on the phone, which is still a really nice way to connect, but to actually see a face. I hadn't seen my mom's face in a couple of weeks, and to actually FaceTime with her felt very different than just hearing her voice on the phone. We are all learning to do new things, to connect differently. I'm used to seeing clients, of course, in person, and now we're connecting through video counseling. And I was a little unsure of what it would feel like to do that, but it's actually been really an easy transition for my clients and I who've tried it. It's a very different way of doing things for sure, but we can all learn to adapt to this new time and it can work for us. Crocuses are just so beautiful, and they're such a beautiful symbol of spring. And I love the way that they come through. They're such tough little flowers that actually come through very cold conditions and are just beautiful. And they're reminders of growth and new beginnings. And that there's still life in us. And I think that's something that has been a little hard to remember, being a little housebound, is that even though we're living in stressful times, our lives are not on hold. And I know that for myself, at first, when I was faced with having my 2 active boys home all the time, and both my husband and myself working from home, I started spinning with questions and I wasn't sure how it was all going to work. But then my husband and I worked together to create an idea of what it could look like, knowing that there were going to need to be compromises in order for those pieces to work. And so that our kids didn't have time where they were just on their own, because being as little as they are, we can't really do that with them. And when we figured that out, how we could balance things became naturally easier. And the other thing that happened was that I had some moments where I really tapped into gratitude. I'm spending more time with my family. I'm spending more time with my kids and my husband. And I have amazing clients who I love connecting with. And now we get to try a new way of connecting. So that stretches my learning skills, which is great. And in being grateful, I'm able to notice that this time can be treasured. And I hope that this is a time where my family can look back and realize that this was a gift. It was a difficult, stressful time, but that I hope my sons say one day, hey, remember how we camped out at the house and there was no school or daycare, and mom and dad took turns watching us and playing with us, and we had dance parties and made up new games and played dress up and made forts and walked in what we called the magical forest, which was really just the abandoned forest near our home, so that we could socially distance. And we were just out there being a family and just enjoying each other. And let's face it, it's not all unicorns and rainbows. It's not. There are tough moments too. But this time, though stressful, has capacity for wonderful connections with the people we love, and for joy and fun and play. And in many ways, as I imagine a lot of you can relate, I'm more stretched now than I've ever been. And amidst all of that, I'm finding moments of fun, and I hope you do too. And I'm trying to hold on to those moments of fun, because we are still living our lives and we are meant for joy. Because if we only live kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, or just keeping our heads down, or giving away to being off center and forget our togetherness, then we are getting further and further away from the life that we want. And so I love this little superhero guy for the next part on expanding our coping. In my work with my clients in exploring and developing coping, sometimes people have a hard time telling me what they do to cope. In fact, a lot of times I don't do anything. Or sometimes I hear, well, I used to cope, but I haven't really thought about it in a really long time. Sometimes they have an answer. And so then I thought maybe it'd be helpful to explore that a little bit. Maybe you have some coping strategies in the past that have worked for you. If you have, maybe they would help you now. Maybe one of your main forms of coping is reliant on something that's not possible right now, like going to the pool or going to the gym. And if that's the case for you, that could be difficult, but maybe there's a way to emulate the feeling, or emulate the feeling of exercise, still within a way that is helpful for you. Anything that takes us away from a place of fear and more to a place of safety and centering. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. So healthy distractions can be really great, but we could also go over some exercises. And so I'm going to go over them as if I would do them with a client in a room, but I'm going to speed them up a little bit just because we're in a webinar setting. Feel free to slow them down as you need to. These are a few exercises that are some favorites of my clients. And we can share these with our partners and our families too. Something to keep in mind, in terms of these exercises, just remember that we are doing them a little bit of a faster pace, and I'll give you cues on what that looks like during the exercises. So the first thing we're going to do are some of the breathing exercises. We'll do box breathing first. And box breathing is really because we're going to be breathing. I'm going to try now to be in the square here. Breathing in for 4 seconds, gently holding for 4 seconds, gently breathing out for 4 seconds, and gently holding for 4 seconds. And so let's just start now that we know what the box looks like, right? Because that's what we're going to form in our minds. Let's close our eyes and we're just going to breathe in and out. Whatever feels good, just in and out. And really settle into your chair and feel fully supported, feet resting on the ground, shoulders relaxed. And let's shift our breathing slightly to more coming in and out through your belly. And feel your ribs and belly expand as you breathe in, and feel your ribs and belly go in as you breathe out. And we'll just take a couple of more breaths here. And we'll begin. So mentally, I just want you to think about slowly breathing in, 2, 3, 4, gently hold, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, and gently hold out, 2, 3, 4, and in, 2, 3, 4, and gently hold, 2, 3, 4, and gently out, 2, 3, 4, and gently hold out, 2, 3, 4, and in, 2, 3, 4, and gently hold, 2, 3, 4, and slowly out, 2, 3, 4. Now we only did that a couple of times, and generally what I would say most people find is that if they do that 6 to 8 rounds of the square, that's the most helpful for them in terms of getting their breathing to slow down. And the idea behind this exercise is that we are combining purposeful distraction by forming a box. Forming that box keeps our minds occupied on that and less on the anxiety we feel. But it also slows down our nervous system because our brains interpret that our slow breathing means that there's no threat, and we become calmer as a result. Let's try another breathing exercises. We're going to do what's called the 1-1 breathing exercise. And sometimes it can be very helpful if box breathing just seems like it's taking too much focus. It's too difficult to do in the moment when you're anxious. And so we're going to simply settle in again. And for this one, you can either choose to close your eyes or not close your eyes, whatever you prefer. But you would breathe in slowly for 5 seconds. So if we breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathing in 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathing out 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, it's helpful to slow down the breathing, not to come from your chest, but more so from your belly. And sometimes it's just a very simple thing. I'm only having to focus on breathing in and out. And a lot of people find that even if they do a minute of that, they find that they're quite a bit calmer. The next exercise is kind of a fun one for kids because I work with children too, and they really like this one. And they love it when their parents do this exercise with them. So imagine that you're holding a candle. This little boy obviously has a cupcake with a candle in it, but imagine you're holding a candle and you're taking a long breath in and then slowly blow the air out towards the candle. And you don't want to blow the candle out. You want to just make the flame wiggle a little bit. So don't blow it out. And then we're going to take another long breath in and slowly, softly breathe out and see the flame wiggle again. And then on the third one, we actually take a long breath in and then we blow the candle out as much as we can. And kids just think that's hilarious. I'm not sure why, but they do. So you might want to try that with your kids if you have them. The next exercise that we're going to do is called calm place or safe state. And it's a visualization. So if you want to try it, we'll close our eyes. And if you could settle yourself in sitting and relax your shoulders, Feel fully supported while sitting in your chair, feet on the floor, breathing in and out. And slow your breathing and shift to belly breathing if you can. Just notice what that feels like. And when you feel as settled as you can, imagine a place that you've been or would like to go that makes you feel calm and peaceful. It can be in nature, or it can be in your home. It can be anywhere you've ever visited. It can be anywhere you like, as long as you only have good feelings and good memories there. Fully experience where you are. What do you see? What do you hear? Is there anything that you can touch, whether it's a branch of a tree or a leaf or water? Feel yourself as fully as you can in this place. And for most people, if they can spend a couple of minutes in this space, just breathing and really focusing on all aspects of this calm space, they find that it really centers them and feels grounding to them. The other exercise that we're going to try, if you'd like, is called hand to heart, hand to center. And it's an exercise based in mindfulness and self-compassion work. It's also another exercise that's really simple enough for little ones to connect with. So let's just close our eyes and just breathe in and out again. And we're getting used to this now because we've done it a few times with the other exercises too. Just breathing in and out. And let's settle into our chairs and feel fully supported, feet resting on the ground, shoulders relaxed. And let's shift our breathing slightly to more coming in and out through our belly. Feeling your ribs and belly expand as you breathe in. Feel your ribs and belly go in as you breathe out. And I'd like you to place one hand on your heart, over your heart, and your other hand over your belly. And as your eyes are closed, feel what that feels like to have your one hand on your heart and your other hand on your belly. Can you just let yourself feel what you feel in this moment, whatever it is? Can you be okay with those feelings? Can you be okay with yourself in this moment? Just notice what you notice. And if you can, if you're able to, try softening the edges of what comes up. Just let yourself be, knowing that what you feel is okay and that you are okay in this moment. You are safe and well in this moment. Let your feelings be what they are. And just breathe. And then you would continue in this way for a few minutes. Okay, so I wanted to say thank you so much for being present and for participating. And I'm going to send it back to Nicole for questions and discussion.
Well, I want to thank you for that, Kjariene. I felt such a sense of calm through your presentation, and I was already thinking about the fact that I'm going to go back to the recording of this and look at some of those beautiful images and hear your words as a way to center myself. And of course, we will be posting the recording of this to our website too, so that people can have the opportunity to go back or to share it with others. I also want to thank all of you for spending this time with us. And I want to let you know that we will continue as a team to be here for you and to invite you to reach out to us. And one of the ways you can do that is on social media. We are going to keep working to find ways to put resources out there and to connect with those in our community through this time. And of course, there's a lot of other webinars coming up. So take a look, and you're welcome to join for any of them. So thank you. For those of you that will stay on with us, we have about another 12 or 13 minutes or so. We would be happy to answer some questions. I'll let you know, Kjariene, we've got some really nice things, just people saying thank you, and it was really beautiful. Thank you for the beautiful presentation. Very grateful. So
Oh, thank you.
certainly it was resonating for
Mhm.
people. Any questions or even comments that people would like to add? I won't share your name. I'll keep you anonymous. But if you have some reactions or thoughts, or maybe there's other things that you have found helpful to center yourself through this time, we can share some of those ideas with the community who's here as well. We have a question. Any suggestions for single moms that
Mm,
don't have a partner to help? That's a good
wow,
question.
that's a
Um,
great question.
yeah, and I want to add just to the question, single moms, but
Yeah.
these are really unique times, and a lot of us have partners in healthcare or with or a lot of other contexts that their jobs are just more demanding than normal, and so also will maybe respond to people who feel like single parents, whether that be moms or dads in general, right now. Yeah, what
Yeah.
comes to mind? Yeah.
Well, that's just such a hard question because, I think that I have a lot of admiration for parents who parent single in a single way. It's very challenging, and that's a big feeling of being stretched. And
Mhm.
so, if there's anybody though that you can kind of make a bit of a plan with that would help you with childcare, I know that we're doing social distancing, but maybe there's one person that you would feel comfortable with in terms of coming into your home or your children going to their home. Although I know that that's a difficult thing right now because, of course, the whole COVID-19 crisis is not really allowing us for those kind of spaces. Um, I would say that it might depend a little bit on the age of her children, but um, I think that having activities for them and rotating through those activities quite frequently might be a really great thing. And you're probably doing that already. So that might not be the best suggestion in the world, but, and really just letting, I think, depending on, again, on the ages of your children, but letting them in to, if they're older, if they're, I'd say in that age group of kind of 9, 10, even 8, they'll understand if someone's busier and there's a lot more demands on time. And so I would say that I'm not a big proponent all the time of videos or things like that, but I also am a much bigger proponent of parents needing a break. So I think that if you want to play some more videos or have them watch a movie because you need some time to yourself, I say kind of in this space and time, go for it. Children will understand and they'll probably kind of appreciate the extra screen time that this time allows. So,
I
yeah.
think many of us are hoping our kids will just inherently understand the rules are different.
Yeah.
The same way, we say rules at grandma and grandpa's might be different. Pandemic rules are different than when we go back. I had the idea today around a little bit of, to answer to this question too. And I think my mom's listening to this webinar, so this gives her a bit of a heads up on what she's about to be asked. But
Yeah.
I was thinking how to occupy my kids while I work a little bit. And I thought, wow, why couldn't I set up a Zoom meeting? And if you had younger kids, a grandparent could read a story or just interact and have a conversation that I might not be part of, but the
Yeah.
person on the other end of that conversation probably needs it just as much too.
Absolutely.
So these times call for a lot of creativity. And I do think
Yes.
single parents out there in particular have a challenge, but I also have seen in social media a lot of connecting people who are in
Yeah.
similar challenges right now. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, are there any YouTube channels or apps you recommend to create a soothing atmosphere, such as relaxing
Hmm.
sounds or meditations?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, in terms of apps, there's an app called Calm, which is really good. And there's actually I think it involves, there's an app, I can't remember if it's Calm or if it's a different one. It'll actually read you a bedtime story. It's like to read you to sleep, which a lot of people have a tough time going to sleep these days. in particular. So if that's a challenge for you, you may want to look that up. Headspace is really good. It's another app that a lot of people connect with and like. Um, I've also heard, in terms of YouTube though, no, I don't really have any particular suggestions, but I generally look up people that are writers that I've liked and sometimes watch some of what they have. So somebody like Brene Brown, or I
Tara
like,
Brach, sorry,
yeah,
Tara
yeah,
Brach, Brach. It's a beautiful website, lots of
yeah,
free meditations and
okay,
things. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a lot of, I would say, whatever you do, if you start listening to something, it doesn't sound like something you do that's calming to you, then turn it off. But I think that water sounds can be really calming. So something like river sounds or something like that, ocean waves. They probably connect more than jungle sounds for a lot of people. Too many birds in the jungle sounds ones, usually. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You have to say calm of those apps is my favorite one because it's got the moving, living
Yes.
thing at the
Yeah.
that's part of the free part too.
Yeah.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
the sounds. Um, Lots more comments here. Just gratitude for putting it on. People expressing that they have been feeling um, anxious and distressed and just how difficult this has been. More than a few people have mentioned how calming your voice is,
Oh,
Kjariene, and I would definitely concur with that. Um, Another really interesting question here, are there any tips to maintain healthy boundaries and minimize guilt with family members that you have established before COVID?
hmm. And so I'm assuming that that means they're talking about when you're living in the same space. Is that
Um,
might maybe how I answer the question? Then maybe the person follows up with some extra questions. But
mhm,
it's a challenge because as I was saying before, sometimes the things that were kind of things, issues that we had in family relationships or couple relationships before coming into this, or parenting, trying to parent children, it it looks so different now in a lot of ways because it's compounded
mhm,
by this situation that we find ourselves in where, the only time I've been out in the last week is to go into a grocery run and go to our walks to the magical forest that we go near our house. And so, and then at times we're going into our clinic to do some video counseling sessions. So it's a very different existence right now. I would say though, to voice your feelings is really important. If there's emotional safety to do that, to be able to say, I need a few minutes, or this isn't really, I don't know why, but I'm feeling this way and I just need some time. And hopefully the person on the receiving end, your partner or your children, will understand that and give you that space and time. Sometimes, though, you physically, I think, have to just walk away and give yourself the time, whether it's okay or not, especially if you feel that it could go to a place where you're you're saying something that you would regret or that would be an overreaction and just not in keeping with who you are.
mhm,
It's just a very challenging time. It's a really difficult time. Yeah.
mhm.
If we all had like, I don't know, like 50-room mansions like celebrities did, then it might be quite different because we could literally socially distance and be, but most of us don't live in that situation. And so it's really tough to find pockets of space within a house. I know myself, sometimes I've resorted down to the laundry room just because I am doing laundry all the time anyway. And I just kind of, touch the washing machine as it's rumbling, and that's a little calming to me, or the dryer. I know that sounds probably really silly, but it just gives me a moment and then I'm back up doing what I was doing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
sometimes just taking those brief moments can be really important.
I remember reading quite a long time ago an article on micro self-care that really resonated with me.
Yeah,
Some of those big things, and so many of them are things we can't do now. Like
I know.
even if we could do a spa day before, we're certainly not doing that now, or even a massage, or
Yeah,
just a lot of things that we do for self-care.
yeah,
And so those micro, like those little moments in the day,
yeah,
that and the point of this particular research study is all of those little micro moments add up. to as much or more than those big things that are hard to get to anyway.
Yeah.
A couple of more comments here. We've got people who work with other people who are in the jobs that they have, saying that those are really helpful exercises to share with patients and clients, as well as people saying that they seem, it sounds like the consensus is like they're really kind of doable, which goes along with that sort of micro self-care in that chaos of our lives on some days. Those are things we could actually do. A couple of suggestions of apps from people in the community here too. Breathe is one that's being suggested. Oh, and another one I have heard about is Insight Timer. And I think that's one that people enjoy quite a bit as well.
Good.
We're hearing from a couple of grandparents, just a reminder, who've little kids in the house, as well as their grown children, and just some really challenging times and living configurations that aren't normal as well. Yeah, so lots of things to work out relationally. When this pandemic is contained and we are slowly adjusted back into socializing, will there be a webinar on how to manage PST related to this ease to back in? I wouldn't mind actually just making a quick comment about that myself. I was thinking about this the other day, and actually was talking to a client in a video session about what the challenges might be like. We're so focused on, dreaming of that moment when the restrictions are lifted and we're out, but of course even good change creates challenges. And what it reminded me of is I had to do a lot of bed rest in my pregnancies, and the longest stretch was it's about 6 months, almost the whole pregnancy. And I was in one room in a bed, and it was actually really difficult. Physically, it was difficult for me to move around a lot after that. I lost some muscle mass, but I was really unprepared and surprised by mentally what a transition it was, what it was like to be in big spaces. And I found myself for a period of time as an extreme extrovert who was dreaming of being around people, coming back in to that little space as a way to just sort of ground myself quite often. It made me wonder what this transition will be like for us when this is lifted. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Well, I was reading an article that was actually written by somebody who is a Canadian who lives in China. And, China has kind of, in their way, just kind of opened up really to having some stores open, and that a lot of the stores even now have signs like Happy New Year, even though that's quite a ways away. And just how different it was feeling. She thought she would have this sense of freedom and just like joy and like, I'm going to skip to the store. And she was really excited to go to the store. But yeah, she was surprised by how difficult it was to see kind of what had happened and kind of have those, it wasn't quite the rush that she thought it was going to be. It's interesting.
Yeah. I think we will need to support, and I love the idea of a webinar around that.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, and finding ways to support the community in that as well. If you have a couple minutes, we'll take maybe one last question, Kjariene. Sure. I think it's a really good one. Do you have any tips for people who are struggling with anxiety because of having to continue to go to work during this time?
That's a great question. All the questions have been really good. Well, that's difficult because, of course, we're getting information all the time that we're supposed to be socially distancing and working from home. But the reality is that it's not very realistic because there's many, many careers that does not fit, that you have to be there in order to see people. You have to work on things. You have to go to the things to work on. And so I would say that as much as you can, if you can do something that centers or do something that grounds you before you leave for work, and just know I'm going to be doing the things that they tell me that I can do, that I have some control over, washing my hands. I'm going to keep that social distance, even if I know it's difficult because I had to tell my first person at a grocery store. It was actually one of the people who worked there. She was like right beside me. And I think it's because we're so used to being in each other's spaces. And I said, it felt very strange say, oh, could you back up a little bit? But I'm trying to keep myself safe and my family safe and my
Yeah.
community safe. And so I can understand why that would be quite anxiety inducing to like go to work and then not really be sure if you're if you're going to carry that back home, either to just for yourself, but also for people you love. So I would just say, as much as you can ground and center yourself and know I'm washing my hands, and tell yourself that I'm washing my hands, I'm keeping myself socially distanced, I'm doing the best I can to keep myself safe and to keep my loved ones safe.
Yeah.
Because in the end, that's as much as we can do if we're still in a position where we need to go to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll take this opportunity because I don't think we can take enough opportunities to thank all of you who are going to work every day,
Mm-hmm.
because and allowing us, to do the social distancing, to do what we can do to keep us all safe. But we need food, we need our hospitals, we need all of those things that people are doing.
Absolutely.
So uh, yeah, we're grateful. Yeah,
Yes.
and acknowledge the toll that that takes as well, especially now. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kjariene. And again, thank you to all of you and for sticking with us for this conversation too. Please feel free to reach out. I know Kjariene will be open for questions later as well. If you want to email them
Sure.
to our office, we can forward them. And I'd be happy to connect as well anytime.
That's good.
So,
Yeah.
okay, take care and stay well. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.